Welcome everybody. Welcome to the NextLOOPP webinar. You won't need your protective gear for this webinar because it's remote and it tells us that we can do anything from anywhere these days. And of course, our favourite phrase is, "Can you hear me?" We have all used that lately, and let's hope you all can hear me for this webinar. This webinar is about closing the loop on polypropylene. It's a polymer that's been a remarkable material that takes up 20% of the global production of plastics. It's got amazing properties with very high stiffness to weight ratio, great insolubility. It's very strong. It can be very tough. It can be transparent. It's made into many products as fiber, sheet, moldings, furniture, appliances, and automotives and packaging. And of course, we're using over 56 million tonnes at the moment, and this is projected to grow to over 83 million tonnes by 2025. And in Europe, we use 10 million tonnes. And if we have a look at the usage of polypropylene across Europe, you can see that in general, it is used in proportion to the population. And in the United Kingdom, we use approximately 10 kilos per every head of population, which means that this material is very widely used globally. 44% of those applications are used in packaging applications. And of course, this means that they are short-lived. And this is why we're running the NextLOOPP, because polypropylene needs to join the league of recycled plastics. In the United Kingdom, we use over 700,000 tonnes of polypropylene, and we place nearly 300,000 tonnes of packaging onto the market. 70% of that packaging is food packaging. We collect 61,000 tonnes of pots, tubs and trays for recycling. And yet the quoted demand for recycled polypropylene in 2020 is nearly double that, nearly 114,000 tonnes. 40% of the rigid packaging waste that's put out from households that is non-bottle is polypropylene. So we know we have a lot of material in our packaging stream, and potentially we should have much more in our recycling stream. And this is really the target for the NextLOOPP project. NextLOOPP is a multi-client project, which means we hope to get companies from across the whole supply chain, and we want them to participate in the process of recycling polypropylene back into high quality food grade materials, and also a new classification of materials which we're calling inert grade polypropylene. More about that later. We know that NextLOOPP will boost the circularity of polypropylene and it will help companies reach their packaging targets. We know the reasons why we can't keep making and throwing plastics away. They're quite evident and they've been in the media extensively. We know we have proven recycling technology to decontaminate polypropylene, and we know we have proven sorting technology. And this is why we're putting together the NextLOOPP multi-client project to enable the closing of the loop on food-grade polypropylene. Brand owners globally have made commitments to recycle their packaging and to use recycled content back into their packaging. We're all familiar with these targets, and we know that in many cases, they'll be looking for materials besides PET and besides high-density polyethylene to meet those recycling targets. And polypropylene is one of the big materials that is going to be in big demand. We have spoken to the retailers in Britain. Marks and Spencer and Co-op, for example, welcome the circular economy approach that NextLOOPP will provide. Co-op are looking to use a minimum of 50% recycled content in all of their packaging. Tesco also looking to use recycled PP in their packaging and welcome the challenge of finding greater quantities of recycled food grade polypropylene. Morrison's acknowledged that we need food grade recycled polypropylene, otherwise they'll be switching to PET. And of course, the target is to deliver recycled contents to meet the requirements of the new tax that's planned. Iceland have been on a journey to ensure that they use as little plastic as possible, but even the plastics they do use will be circular, and they want to support initiatives that can actually help them meet those recycling targets. So if I come back to the mission of NextLOOPP, we want to create circular food grade recycled polypropylene from post-consumer packaging. That's very clear. And we wanted to achieve that mission by establishing a supply chain model for collection, sorting, and the reprocessing of food grade polypropylene packaging, which will be processed in efficient manufacturing processes to produce the high quality and food grade polypropylene. And this will be done in pilot and large scale operations. And we'd like to see the products used in a wide range of processing techniques and products to help meet the recycling targets that we've just referred to. We've mapped out a series of milestones for the NextLOOPP project, and I'll just go through them briefly. We want to develop the infrastructure for the recycling of polypropylene to meet food grade quality in the major population within the UK. We want to produce food grade PP for reuse into consumer products, including cosmetics and food products. We will establish certification with EFSA and US FDA for the manufacturing processes that we have developed and will improve. We'll start the recovery of products for recycling. We will enhance the current recycling and decontamination processes to boost the efficiency and to reduce the cost of the recycling processes. And we'll develop specific grades for film, sheet, extrusion, thermoforming, blow molding, and injection molding. And those materials will be used in solutions to maximize the recycled content and to ensure processing stability for monolayer and multi-layer structures. And very importantly, at the very end, we will develop new design for food grade recycling guidelines for brand owners, retailers, and converters, which will initiate a much better loop for polypropylene as it becomes a circular polymer to a greater extent. I want you to hear from Sally Beacon from the KTN, which is linked to Innovate UK, and from Peter Maddox from RAP about the challenges and the need for a food grade recycling program like NextLOOPP.
The need for a food grade recycled polypropylene, well, we should, first of all, just as a moral reason, we shouldn't be wasting valuable material. Most of it's going to landfill or incineration. But right now, more urgently, it's being driven by legislation. So this March, the UK budget announcement of a proposed plastics packaging tax will mean that there's actually a driver towards needing recycled grade materials, and that's around £200 a tonne. So it's a need and a moral obligation, I believe.
Well, I think first to say it's really important that polypropylene is a really valuable and versatile material. We've got some amazing barrier properties, which is why it is so widely used in food packaging. I think the challenge is that currently all food grade post-consumer packaging is currently downcycled to non-food grade materials. It goes into pallets, trays, crates, and it even goes into the automotive sector. That's the challenge for polypropylene packaging.
And we want to meet those challenges in the NextLOOPP project. We know we're going to have challenges with feedstock recycling. We need to have prior use food grade polypropylene to levels greater than 95%. We need to get accreditation from EFSA to operate under the right guidelines within Europe. We know that the products need to meet migration test conditions. And we know that the recycling processes and the sorting processes have to be economic and competitive with comparable recycling solutions. And we need to develop grades for those applications so that we can put material back into the sheet, the injection molding, film, and textile applications where polypropylene is currently used. And we also want to meet the needs of the cosmetics industry, where they currently use the food grade material, but they could equally use materials which we're calling inert grade polypropylene, which will have no challenges when it comes to migration behaviour in those applications. So let me talk about some of the solutions that the NextLOOPP program will offer. We already have some of these solutions in a format that's ready to be exploited. We've already demonstrated a high performance mechanical recycling process and a decontamination process that meets the EFSA and US FDA food contact requirements. We know that the materials produced will actually meet all of the aqueous, acidic and alcoholic conditions required of polypropylene. And in the more challenging area, it will also meet quite a few of the oil migration conditions as well. This is the most challenging area for polypropylene. Initially, the feedstocks for the production of food grade PP will come from closed loop sources, and we know they are already available to us. And this will then develop into collecting material from production products using markers on labels, and this will use the fully proven Prism marker technology system. And we already have had full-scale production trials with injection molding and sheet production, which have been very successful. Here are some examples of products that have been made with food-grade polypropylene at levels of up to 50%. And these are arbitrary levels, and we can go further, but they're just one example. And here are some of the properties of the food-grade recycled polypropylenes that have been made. And the properties are comparable to many of the properties of virgin copolymer materials with medium toughness. And so we know we can make materials that can take the role of virgin polypropylene and meet all of the technical, food contact, and other properties that are needed in packaging applications. On the issue of food grade approval, which is quite a critical step, we know the process that we've developed meets EFSA requirements. We have asked the legal firm Steptoe & Johnson, who are specialists in food contact legislation, to examine our data, and they have confirmed that the performance of the process meets EFSA and US FDA requirements for direct food contact. In terms of sorting technologies, we have the Prism marker system, which is now plug and play ready. This process can achieve greater than 95% purity in the first step of sorting. And then it can achieve greater than 99% purity on the second step of sorting. And this is all being done at a belt speed of 3 meters per second and 2 tons per hour per meter width of belt. And while we know that this technology is now going to be targeted at polypropylene, it will also be able to be applied to high density polyethylene and PET. And it can be applied to other functions besides food grade. But in this particular case, in the NextLOOPP project, we'll be targeting the discrimination between food and non-food packaging. I want to show you a brief video about the Prism technology system. In this short video, you'll see marker bottles that have been labelled, placed into a mixture of post-consumer packaging, and then resorted. And this, of course, is being done at high speed with high efficiency. In one step, greater than 95% purity can be achieved. In this case, we've coated the blue and the red to be ejected at the same time. And I'd like to hear from George Fern, who's been one of our participating specialists from Brunel University, talking on the Prism marker system.
It can have a major positive influence on recycling. What I like about the technology is that the home consumer doesn't have to do anything different for their plastics to be recycled, so long as they leave the Prism label on the packaging. So as long as you put in your waste, general waste, like I do here, into my general recyclables refuse collection, and ultimately that will find its way to the plastic recycling plant, and using the Prism label, that will be automatically recycled.
And as an example of the plug and play readiness of our system, we have actually demonstrated this by going to a general purpose recycler in Germany that had an existing TOMRA module, and we retrofitted that plant with the UV sorting hardware and software in less than 1 hour, and then starting sorting fluorescent marker labels on bottles. So the Prism system is plug and play ready to go right now. We don't need to develop it anything further, and so we can sort food grade from non-food grade. I'd like you to hear from Dr. Ralph Uping from TOMRA about what are the barriers and potential of the NEXTLOOPP recycling program.
I can think of two barriers. So the first one is the missing certified recycling processes certified by the EFSA. And the second barrier I see is how to get food plastic separated from non-food. So this can be first organizational, like in PET with a deposit system, collecting it separately. But technically it could also be sensor-based sorters, which are able to distinguish between food grade or non-food. And these are the barriers, I think, which are missing. If we want to tackle the plastic problem, then we need to invest into technology here, because the potential is quite big. And I do not see any reason from a technical point of view why we could not achieve with polyprop what we have already achieved with PET. So there's the technology on the one side, but of course at the same time the technology needs to address the concerns or the regulations of the EFSA.
So the benefits of joining the NEXTLOOPP program will be the capacity to share the knowledge of the technical advances that can boost the recyclability of polypropylene packaging. There'll be the opportunity to join the pathway for circular polypropylene for brand owners and retailers via the NEXTLOOPP systems and the technologies. We'll be able to also establish pilot facilities that can manufacture recycled food grade polypropylene to help meet the targets of the retailers and the brand owners. And we intend to participate in research applications such as the Smart Sustainable Packaging Challenge via the collaborative and large-scale demonstration applications. In addition, there will be the opportunity to trial early production materials in specific products for the participants in the NEXTLOOPP program. At the same time, we'll be able to use all of the expertise that we have to solve problems that have been encountered in the recycling of polypropylene packaging. And I'm sure we will see further benefits within the program that will evolve just by participation. I'd like now you to hear from Jude Allen and Sally Beacon. Jude Allen is from the Institute of Materials, the president of the Packaging Society, and Sally Beacon again from the KTN, talking about why NEXTLOOPP should be an implemented program for your companies and for the organisations that might want to participate.
So the obvious answer of why it's important to work towards the increase of recycling of PP is to save the world from plastic pollution. And the second, slightly more detailed thing is about there's some circular economic principles that is just so important to try and keep materials in use. Materials have value, and if we can realise the value, then why throw it away? We want to keep plastic in the economy and out of the natural environment. And anything that works towards increasing the recycling of materials is in an effective and economic way. It's got to be a good thing.
It is difficult to track and separate polypropylene, and it's quite difficult technically in this particular aspect, because polypropylene packaging might be used for food grade material, or it might be used for cosmetics or laundry and detergents, for example. And to get through the EU regulations to achieve a food grade, recycled polypropylene grade, you need to be using just the material that's come from the food waste stream and not from the chemical and laundry detergents waste stream. So there's innovation required, and that's where this smart sustainable plastic packaging challenge comes into play. It's to support consortia and businesses that need resource and collaborative partnerships in this area.
And finally, we're very pleased to put the endorsement of Stuart Foster, who supports the NEXTLOOPP initiative and comments that he knows that there will be a need for innovation and also significant markets for food grade recycled polypropylene along the pathway of achieving a circular economy in the packaging sector. So we've come to the end of my presentation, and I'd just like to acknowledge all of the people who have contributed their comments and their thoughts about the NEXTLOOPP program, and also to thank my team who have helped put this whole webinar together. And we're now going to move to the Q&A section. I know we're running slightly behind time, but let's hope that we can actually get to as many questions as possible, if not now, in time to come via emails. Okay, the first question is, are we in contact with the resin producers, the chemical companies who are undertaking chemical recycling? Indeed we are, and indeed they are interested in the NEXTLOOPP program. And so there are other questions on chemical recycling, and we can say why we're not part of the recycling process, and it's really very simple. Mechanical recycling is very direct. It's the most carbon efficient way of recycling packaging. And we get back the packaging that's been made, and we can keep the material in a circular process at a much lower footprint. We've had a question, is this mechanical recycling? Indeed, it is mechanical recycling. We've had a question from Peter at Amcor. How will we implement the Prism system, and how will we stop it from contaminating the NEXTLOOPP? Well, it's really very simple. The recycling processes that we use will remove the labels which carry the marker through each cycle. So each cycle, the material is pristine. It's without a marker. And this is to avoid false positives in the future. There is also a question about flexible packaging. In this case, we are targeting the area of rigid packaging. The NEXTLOOPP materials will be available for use back in film. However, film represents a unique challenge. We'd welcome the opportunity to work with the film materials, provided we can get sources of material that are reasonably sorted so that we can put them through the recycling process. There's no doubt we can do it, but we need sources of material that are suited for the recycling. We've got another question here about the cost of the process. The recycling process is comparable to other recycling processes that are used to recycle food grade PET and food grade high density polyethylene. And yes, it does cost to recycle materials, and indeed the cost might be challenging for some companies, but the days of making low quality and low cost material are over if you want to consider putting this material back into food grade packaging. It has to be considered as a way of creating a circular loop for polypropylene, which is not there right now. And we're all challenged by the one-way culture that we've grown over the years, and it's time to change that culture and to move to a circular economy. We have a question here about, I'm sorry, I've lost that question. Let's see if I can quickly retrieve it. What capacity are we targeting within the NEXTLOOPP program? Well, we're going to discuss the details of the targets, the milestones, and the detailed work packages in the webinar that will follow all of the parties that have registered their interest. And once they've registered their interest, we'll be able to give those precise details. We certainly want to make this whole program significant, and we'll be able to make commercial quantities of materials within the next 12 months. We know we can do this. Okay, we have a question here about the color of the material. Will it be 50 shades of grey? Indeed, we will make 50 shades of grey of polypropylene. However, there'll be a very narrow range of those greys. Can we make a transparent stream of material? Absolutely right. The moment polypropylene is made in transparent quantities, we can make transparent polypropylene. Whatever you put into the recycling stream as a brand owner or a retailer, we can give back to you. But if you make coloured material and then ask us to recycle it back into clear, then you need to use a far more expensive process than mechanical recycling. So we can do what we can within the constraints of what is put into the market. We have a question here, a very technical one about surrogates. Indeed, we'll be able to confirm what surrogates we'll be using. We have a list of surrogates that have already been used in the existing trials. And again, we can make that available to people who register their interest in the subsequent webinar for those people who will be taking the next step with the NEXTLOOPP program. So we have a question about, can we mark packaging for non-food applications? So we can both put markers for food grade so that we can positively select food grade packaging. We can also put markers on materials that need to be kept out of the food grade packaging stream. For example, herbicides or pesticides or toxic materials. Provided we have the interaction with the brand owners, we can put markers on to exclude those. So we can positively select and we can positively reject materials. Okay, we have a question here about timescales. Our timescale is we want the NEXTLOOPP program to start this year. We're planning for the third quarter of 2020 to initiate the program. Our target date is the 1st of October, and it'll be a 12-month program. More about that once people register in the program. We've got some questions about chemical recycling. Will we be investigating chemical recycling? The answer is no. This is a mechanical recycling process, and this is why we're going to do this. It can be done, and it's the efficient way to go. I know we're running out of time, and perhaps we can get another question in. Okay, we have another question here about using the material in film applications. The answer is the materials that we produce from the NextLOOPP program can be used for extrusion application and potentially in blown film. Blown film is very challenging. We understand the limitations there, and we have to have very precise conditions. And the thing I'll say is we have actually achieved quite remarkable results in the extrusion trials we've trialed so far, but more about that to companies who want to join us through the expression of interest. And I think we're coming to the end of our time. We have more questions to answer, and I want to thank everybody who's participated in the webinar. We want to make sure that we answer your questions. We will try to do that in the coming days. We'd also like to announce that we have another webinar scheduled for Thursday. In this case, it's going to be scheduled for the Asia Pacific region because we've had many requests to hold a webinar in a time zone that's more benign to them. It's actually 12:30 in Australia where I am right now. And so next Thursday, if you want to get up at 7 o'clock, if you're in Britain or in Europe, but you can join the people in Australia at 4 p.m. Sydney time, but it's a friendlier time for the people in New Zealand, Bangkok, Malaysia, and so on. So with that, I wish you well. Thank you for joining the webinar. We look forward for you to come to our program and put your expression of interest forward. And I'm just going to go to our page and bid you adieu, and look forward to hearing from you in the near future. Thank you.